We have our next session of the day. Ladies and gentlemen, we now move on to our second session for the day, growth stories and lessons from the trenches. This session aims to bring forth the experiences, triumphs, trials, and learnings of some exceptional entrepreneurs who have navigated the trenches and emerged victorious. It's about the journey, the process, and the resilience required for sustainable growth. Allow me to introduce our speakers for this session. Firstly, we have Mr. Vinay Singhal, the co-founder and CEO of Stage-OTT for Bharat, a unique platform that brings regional content to the forefront. Under Mr. Singhal's guidance, Stage has been instrumental in driving the revolution of regional content, acknowledging and catering to the diverse linguistic landscape of India. Next, we have Mr. Aniket Deogar, the co-founder and CEO of Haqdarshak, a social enterprise committed to making welfare schemes more accessible to citizens. With his innovative solutions, Mr. Deogar has demonstrated how social entrepreneurship can transform lives, communities, and countries. Lastly, we have Mr. Divyanshu Sharma, the co-founder and CEO of Office Banao. His innovative platform has been a game changer in the workspace industry, making the dream of having a perfect workspace a reality for many startups and established companies alike. Each of our speakers today brings a wealth of insights from their respective fields, having led their ventures through the undulating landscape of growth and challenges. They stand before us as a testament to what a true growth mindset can achieve. And to help navigate this deep dive into their journeys, I'm thrilled to introduce our moderator, Mr. Jivraj Singh Sachar. A prominent name in the investment landscape, Mr. Sachar is the founder and managing partner of Indian Silicon Valley Capital, where he works tirelessly to fuel the growth of budding ventures in the tech industry. His sharp insights and deep understanding of the startup ecosystem makes him the perfect choice to guide the discussion. As we step into this session, get ready to be inspired, to learn, and to take away invaluable lessons from the trenches of entrepreneurship. Welcome to our second session at TiEcon Kolkata 2023, Growth Stories and Lessons from the Trenches.
Thank you so much. That was a very kind introduction to our three distinguished speakers. I'm super glad to be the one doing this because there is an uncannily amazing diversity in this panel today. And I'm so glad that you're going to be observing the insights. To get into the feel of the panel, before we go into the insights, I'd love if every one of you can maybe explain what you do very succinctly so that we have a better idea of what we are getting into and what we will end up discussing in the next 40 odd minutes. So we'll be very glad if one of you can start and take it forward.
This works, right? Really glad to be here, Divyanshu. At my heart, I consider myself as a Kolkata boy. I went to the B school here. I am Calcutta. Spent a very interesting 2 years of my life, 20 years back. Then my first job was also in Kolkata, and then traveled around the world. Lot of time in US, lot of time in emerging markets, Latin America, Southeast Asia, India, startup world, consulting. Right now, I am working with a very esteemed set of co-founders to build this company called Office Banao. The name is quite clear. हम office बनाते हैं. If you have an office requirement, if you want new offices, renovation, anything, we are the guys. That's how we position ourselves. We are revolutionizing how you create, maintain, manage offices with technology. So there's a lot of technology play. There's a lot of on-ground execution play. There's a lot of very high-end, I would say, AI stuff. And there's a lot of very on-the-ground, how do you get carpenters to deliver quality kind of stuff. So it's a very interesting play. And how we are driving growth in this is also something which is very interesting in the way we are trying to define and redefine growth, and how do you actually go about having growth, which is, I typically don't like the phrase sustainable growth, because growth has to be sustainable. It's almost like you're adding an adjective which is not needed, right? What I use personally, and it's a personal passion of mine, is to define healthy growth, and that's where in the conversation probably we'll go a bit deeper into it.
So thanks Divyanshu. And hi, I'm Aniket. I'm the founder of Haqdarshak. Essentially, at Haqdarshak, we are trying to get people access to different government schemes and documents. I think in India, we have about 20,000 government schemes. Around 10% of our GDP is what we spend on social security and government benefits. So this amount is close to $350 billion. And close to a billion people, about from 1.4 billion are the people who are eligible for these programs. Because while we are growing as an economy, we still have about 86% of the country living on around minimum wages, $200, $250. So one bad health event, one bad climate event which is happening up north from where I come from, Himachal, and you can fall back into poverty. So what our goal is to deliver social security services to these citizens, but also what we are working on is building a high quality service delivery for this segment. Because in this room, I think there are 3 services which we get from the government or which we avail, which are high quality service: your passport, visa, and tax services. All these 3 services are actually delivered by private companies: TCS, VFS, Infosys. So the idea also is that while government designs these programs, how can you ensure that somebody in rural West Bengal, for example, can also get access to their pension in the same quality of service as you get your passport in Kolkata? So that's really a goal. We work with corporate partners in getting their workers and their supply chains access to government schemes. And we do this through our technology platforms. We built about 12 technology platforms catering to farmers, workers, small businesses in terms of documents and government schemes. And the last mile delivery we do is through women agents, because the other reality of India is that India is an assisted tech country. It is not an end-to-end digital country. The Bharat, as we say, needs assisted help to get these services, and that's what we have built, a network of 40,000 women agents across the country.
हाय एवरीवन, मेरा नाम विनय सिंघल है। मैं स्टेज-OTT करके एक ऐप चलाता हूँ, उसका को फाउंडर और CEO हूँ, जो कि भारत की बोलियों में कंटेंट बनाती है। हम देश का और दुनिया का पहला बोलियों का OTT प्लेटफॉर्म है। आज के दिन स्टेज हरियाणवी और राजस्थानी में कंटेंट करता है। तो ऑल मारवाड़ीज इन द हाउस, देयर इज़ एन ऐप फॉर यू गाइज आउट देयर, प्लीज़ डाउनलोड। सो थीसिस बहुत सिंपल है हमारा। You look at all the OTT platforms in India, in the name of regional and vernacular content, all of them essentially do language-based content. Hindi, Tamil, Telugu, Marathi, Punjabi, Bangla, Gujarati. That is where typically the story ends for everybody. But if you I grew up in a very small village in Haryana, and I grew up speaking Haryanvi. So my question to myself was very simple, that हरियाणवी में कोई ऐप क्यों नहीं है? हरियाणवी में पता चला कि कंटेंट ही नहीं होता है। फिर पता किया कि कंटेंट क्यों नहीं होता, तो पता चला कि बेसिकली इसलिए क्योंकि हरियाणवी एक बोली है, भाषा नहीं है। एंड दिस कॉन्स्टिट्यूशनल डिफरेंस basically leads to a very huge discrimination and suppression of these dialects over so many years that that all of us who grew up in villages, who grew up in rural parts of the country or in these parts, grew up with very huge inferiority complex in our brain कि यार हरियाणवी में बोलेंगे, राजस्थानी में बोलेंगे तो हमको कोई गंवार समझ लेगा, अनपढ़ समझ लेगा, गांव का समझ लेगा, एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ। सो आइडेंटिफाइंग दैट, जबकि हम शहर से जैसे ही बाहर जाते हैं, बेसिकली इन इंडिया लैंग्वेज इज़ एन अर्बन कॉन्सेप्ट, क्योंकि शहर में हम बहुत सारी अलग अलग जगहों से आए हैं। मैं अभी हिंदी में इसलिए बात कर रहा हूँ या अंग्रेजी में हम लोग इसलिए बात कर रहे हैं क्योंकि शायद ये कॉमन ग्राउंड है कि यार सब लोग समझ लेंगे। मुझे पता होता है कि इस रूम में सारे लोग बांग्ला हैं या मारवाड़ी हैं फॉर दैट मैटर, या हरियाणवी हैं, और मुझे भी वो आती डायलेक्ट, तो मैं बाय डिफ़ॉल्ट उसी में स्विच कर देता अभी तक, राइट? सो द इनसाइट दैट वी लैंडेड ऑन वाज दैट इन इंडिया लैंग्वेज इज़ एन अर्बन कॉन्सेप्ट। द मोमेंट यू गो बियॉन्ड अर्बन सेटलमेंट, शहर से आप जैसे ही बाहर जाते हो, हर कोई बोलियाँ बोलता है, तो फिर बोलियों में कोई कंटेंट क्यों नहीं बनाता या उसमें कोई कंपनी क्यों नहीं है? सो स्टेज यही सॉल्व कर रहा है। स्टेज देश और दुनिया का पहला बोलियों का OTT प्लेटफॉर्म है। हरियाणवी से शुरू किया, अभी राजस्थानी में भी हम लोग लाइव हो गए हैं। इमेजिन अस लाइक नेटफ्लिक्स बट इन राजस्थानी। बेसिकली हम राजस्थानी में मूवीज़ बनाते हैं, राजस्थानी में वेब सीरीज़ बनाते हैं बहुत अच्छी क्वालिटी की, राजस्थानी में हम डॉक्यूमेंट्रीज बना रहे हैं, स्पोर्ट्स कमेंट्रीज कर रहे हैं. वी जस्ट डिड अ इंटायर कबड्डी टूर्नामेंट दुबई में हुआ था, एक विमेंस कबड्डी लीग, एंड द इंटायर कमेंट्री लाइव स्ट्रीमिंग वाज डन बाय अस इन हरियाणवी एंड राजस्थानी बोथ ऑन आवर ऐप एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ. बेसिकली सो लाइक आई सेड, ये आपका अपना OTT है जहाँ वो जड़ें, वो आपका गांव, वो आपकी जगह जिसको शायद आपकी उस कल्चर और आपकी उस बोली को शायद अगली जनरेशन, क्योंकि उसमें फिल्म नहीं बनती है, क्योंकि उसमें कुछ कूल नहीं होता, तो भूल रही थी. हम उसको बेसिकली वापस लाने का काम कर रहे हैं. एंड सो या, दैट्स व्हाट वी आर डूइंग. हैप्पी टू बी हियर. थैंक यू सो मच.
Hello. Yes. Thank you for that round of applause, and that definitely deserves one. So everybody in the audience now knows that if you've ever thought about designing an office, you have somebody who's an expert at that and much more when it comes to enterprise sales. If you've ever thought about government schemes and never understood them, you have somebody who has distributed them across lakhs of villages and families in the country and been doing that for 7.5 years. And if you've ever watched a non-Hindi, non-English movie in a regional dialect, but that's been on a different app, you have somebody solving for that. So we have this diversity, which is very evident, and experience that we want to capitalize on. What we want to discuss further is growth. As business people here, I'm sure all of you consider growth on a sales revenue basis from every year, right? So the idea here is that these are venture-backed companies who look at growth and profitability and numbers in a different way, but in a very interesting way, and we want to capture that. Why I'm setting this context is what we'd love at the end of this session is have questions from all of you. And so please listen intently as possible so that we can come back for questions here. But maybe I'll start with Divyanshu. Divyanshu, you've come from 20 years of experience, having graduated from IIM Calcutta in 2003. Since then, you've cracked these multi-million-dollar and more enterprise deals. And I've had the pleasure of knowing Divyanshu's incredible insights on business. But if you had to talk about growth when it comes to B2B, what would be your insights to a room full of businessmen and folks who are aspirational business folks? What would you have to tell them?
Thanks. This is audible, right? See, when I look at my own journey, I feel very fortunate to have been part of 4 or 5, I would say, but 5 I can think of as very interesting growth journeys that I have seen or witnessed or been contributing to. So, for example, I was in US in 2003 to 8 or 9, where I saw Amazon growing like 40% year on year and becoming what they are today, right? I was at the forefront of digital technology, e-commerce, all of that kind of stuff, and I was seeing Amazon's journey. I was in Brazil in 2010-11, when Brazil, if you remember, there was this phrase called BRICS, right? How many of us still remember BRICS, right? So BRICS, Brazil was the first letter in there, right? And 2010, Brazil was the hottest market in the world. I saw a lot of, the largest B2B deal of my life was cracked there, about $1 billion plus, with a retailer in Brazil. Then I was in Indonesia in 2013-14. Again, Indonesia, people were awakening to the sleeping giant, right? It was very interesting even for me to understand that Indonesia has the 4th largest population in the world after China, India, US. And Indonesia had the 2nd largest young population in the world after India. I didn't know that before I landed up in Jakarta for the first time. And that at that point in time, people were starting to realize that Indonesia is 65-70% of ASEAN. And ASEAN was the big story during that period. Then when I came back to India, I joined Snapdeal. And that was another very interesting growth journey where Snapdeal and Flipkart and Amazon, at one point in time, these 3 players were kind of almost neck to neck, and they were trying for the pole position. Now that has been decided now, but that was another growth journey. And then, of course, right now I am working with Office Banao, where there's a very different aspect of growth and there's different angle to growth. So if I crystallize and put in what I have learned and what we are putting into Office Banao, there are 2 very critical learnings that we can crystallize. One is that growth is not a hack, it's a long-term vision. I mean, if you see startups, if you talk to a lot of people, will say, okay, are you a growth hacker, right? You would have heard this phrase quite a lot, right? Growth is never a hack. Growth is a trend. Growth is a long-term vision. You need to really invest in growth. And as I said, I mean, that's why I don't like the phrase sustainable growth, because growth, if it's not sustained, it's not a growth. It's just a hack, right? And that's why, that's again, maybe because of my own upbringing, but there are phrases which you kind of tend to catch on to, right? And the second thing is growth is also not just sales and top lines or customer acquisition. There are a lot of people, I mean, yesterday dinner time we were talking about, oh, so you're talking about growth, so you'll talk about sales, but are you also going to talk about profitability? So I said, look, growth is not just sales, and growth is not anti-profitability, growth is not anti-margins. So if I crystallize this and see how we are building it up in Office Banao, there are two very critical things that we have done. Because we also cater to the B2B market. I mean, most of the offices that we are doing is businesses, right? One way to look at it is we have built a team which is strategy and growth right from the onset. And I think that's something which is very important for every business, not just startups or venture-backed startup, but every business to have a strategy and growth team. Because this is a team which looks at not what you're doing in operations today, but how your business is going to be shaped up tomorrow. Most of the time you don't have resources, you don't put money, you don't put smart people in looking at the tomorrow of your business. Those conversations are either post-work at 7 p.m. or later or in your weekly meetings, but there's no resources to back it up. So you will set up 5 action items, but there's nobody whose primary job is to get those action items done, right? And that's where you fail to really drive that kind of conversation. So we built up a team for strategy and growth. A very important aspect of that strategy and growth team is that we have built a team for health. And that's where I am very passionate about. Again, a very interesting anecdote. I think I am a 90s kid, right? There was this very interesting ad that used to come from Complan, if you remember. Badta Bachcha types, right? So there was this healthy growth. A growing boy needs to be drinking a lot of health drink, right? So if you look at that kind of a growth, health is very important. What does health mean? Health means that the fundamentals of your business are in good shape. Because unless your fundamentals of the business are in good shape, you will not just be able to drive any sort of growth in any metric. Even if your sales metric is growth, even if your metric for growth is things like customer acquisition or app installs, for example, right? Or how many schemes are you able to pass on to. These will not work out on a long-term sustainable basis unless the basic fundamentals of your business are there. And those basics are processes, those basics are what we call as customer NPS or customer satisfaction, employee satisfaction, partner satisfaction, making it broad-based. So is like 90% of your customer base coming from one small area, that's a risk. Growth is also, and health is also about managing, anticipating risk in your business. Commercial risk, pricing risk, regulatory risk, reputation risk, because that's something which has become much more evident in the digital and social world. And then about building insights before you start getting data. So all of this stuff, people think about when they have maybe crossed a certain level in a lot of startups, but we have started to do this from day 0 and day 1, which is very important. The second thing is the definition of growth itself, of how we are defining. We are not equating growth with sales. There's when we call it the golden quadrilateral of 4 key metrics on which we are defining our growth. Number 1 is NPS and customer satisfaction. So how many customers are we able to satisfy? Is that number increasing or not is growth to us. Number 2 is of course sales as well, because sales will drive more customer acquisition. That's there. Number 3 is also what we call as margins or take rates or things like that. Are we sustaining that? Are we making a conscious call of bringing it down? Are we making a conscious call of bringing it up? And the 4th is our cash flows. So if you look at this golden quadrilateral of customer satisfaction, sales, margins and cash flows, and build your growth model around it, then it will always be much more, in your phrase, sustainable, and much more, in my phrase, healthy. And very interesting thing that comes out is, let's say when you start building up NPS and you say, okay, these are 10 things that you need to do for NPS. you will figure out that 3 of those are actually hindering your sales growth. Your salespeople are not able to drive more sales because of something you decided for NPS, or your NPS is impacting your margins, or your cash flow is impacting your NPS. I think once you start listing them down and once you start making the trade-offs, that's where the real businesses are built. That's where the business will be built in a very healthy way. So I think whether it's B2B or whether it's any kind of business that you guys are doing, if you think about it from these lenses, you will build a business which is growth, but not just sales growth, but overall business growth. That's what it is.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Divyanshu. I mean, if you've not thought about building a health vertical in your business, maybe it's time now. Very interesting fact, and I'd love to bring this with the audience. How many people in the audience have worked in 20 countries? But that man who just explained all of these growth learnings has actually done this over 2 decades, and that is where the experience comes from. I'd love to come to Vinay. Curious question again. How many of you saw Vinay on Shark Tank when the episode aired? Awesome. Not as many, which means there is homework for the rest of you. It is an incredible episode, and I can guarantee goosebumps for you, because Vinay comes from a background where he built $1 million and plus business, which vanished on a single day when he woke up the next time. And that was called Witty Feed. And he left that business, convinced the team to put money back into the company, where salaries for 54 people were foregone to the extent of 75% and put back into their current existing business. What I want to understand from you, Vinay, is when you come and start this sort of a journey, what are things that you focus on? Because you've touched blood, as they say, right? You've seen what success almost looks like, and you have to restart. And the intrinsic thing can perhaps be कि यार, I want to be on that 10-day growth, in 10 days I want to reach the same extent that I did in 3, 4, 5 years, right? How did you go about the early stages of Stage? What was growth like during Witty Feed days, and how did you manage it with the Stage initiation?
Thank you, Jivraj, for asking that question. मुझे 14-15 साल हो गए अब बनाते हुए कंपनी अलग अलग. Witty Feed बनाया. Witty Feed at its peak, like you said, was a pretty big company. We were the second largest in the world in our category, that we were doing viral content company essentially after BuzzFeed. 40 crores in revenues, 300 crores in valuations, bootstrapped, profitable, all of that, and then losing that company overnight. I think that experience teaches you quite a lot, right? When something of that sort, जितने भी बड़े-बड़े इवेंट हम सबकी ज़िंदगी में होते हैं, right? जैसे शादी होना, बच्चा होना, ये सब होना, इस तरह, तो you basically in those moments you sit down and you reflect back on कि अच्छा चल क्या रहा है मेरी लाइफ में, right? So and losing a family member also is a very similar moment, right? So for me, losing Witty Feed was like losing a child, right? कि आपने 7-8 साल एक कंपनी को बनाया, स्क्रैच से बनाया, एंड इतनी मतलब आई वाज वेरी यंग एट दैट पॉइंट इन टाइम एट लीस्ट, राइट? सो तो एंड लूजिंग दैट ओवरनाइट ऑल ऑफ अ सडन leaves you with a lot of reflection to do on, right? Lot of depression, frankly speaking. You know, when you go through it, you are asking yourself that, you know, why are we even? मैं तो थोड़ा existential crisis में चला गया था, because before Witty Feed we were like the, मतलब for the lack of a better word, like Tier 2 में उस समय बहुत स्टार्टअप्स नहीं बनते थे, राइट? 2015, 16, 17 की अगर हम बात करें तो मोस्ट ऑफ द कंपनी सारी दिल्ली, बॉम्बे, बैंगलोर, यहीं पे बेसिकली एक्शन था सारा, राइट? एंड वी वर बिल्डिंग इट फ्रॉम इंदौर से हम 300 करोड़ की कंपनी बना रहे हैं, 40 करोड़ का रेवेन्यू कर रहे हैं, अमेरिका के लिए सॉल्व कर रहे हैं सब. तो इट वाज हार्ड टू इमेजिन कि 120 मिलियन इंडिया का टोटल इंटरनेट ट्रैफिक नहीं होता था उस समय पे. हमारा ट्रैफिक 120 मिलियन था. मैं जाके किसी को दिल्ली वगैरह में जब किसी एंटरप्रेन्योर को बता रहे नहीं, कोई घोची कर रहे हो, 120 मिलियन तो इंडिया का ट्रैफिक ही नहीं है. हाउ डू यू कन्विंस देम कि हमारा तो 60 मिलियन अमेरिका से है, right? Because India से international भी was not a thing that was happening, at least back in the day. And so you lose that all of a sudden. You were known as the founder of Witty Feed. अब Witty Feed exist नहीं करता है तो who are you, right? And that led me on this spiral down where I ended up asking कि अरे हम हैं ही क्यों, कर क्यों रहे हैं, क्या कर रहे हैं, क्या मतलब है, क्यों जिंदा हैं, क्या point है इस धरती पे रहने का, and all of that stuff basically, right? And I think that I think that was the most brilliant moment of my life. When I reflect back today, when I in the retrospect, and a very smart man said that you can't connect the dots looking forward,
You can connect them only looking backward. Steve Jobs ने कहा था ये. तो looking backwards, I only look at it and I say कि यार बहुत अच्छा हुआ, right? ईस्टर्न फिलॉसफी में बात करें तो ईस्टर्न फिलॉसफी में यही बात बोली जाती है कि यार जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है. यू मे नॉट बी एबल टू रियलाइज इट इन द मोमेंट, बट जब आप वापस जाके देखते हो, जब आप उस मोमेंट में से, उस सिचुएशन में से गुजर लेते हो, तो आपको रियलाइज होता है कि यार अच्छा ही हुआ, क्या ख़राब हुआ उसमें. लाइक लूजिंग विटीफीड वॉज द बेस्ट थिंग दैट हैपेंड टू मी एंड माई करियर. आई वुडंट बी एज गुड अ फाउंडर, आई वुडंट मेक, देयर वुडंट बी नो स्टेज. आई थिंक आई एम सो मच मोर प्राउड ऑफ what we do at Stage than I was at Vitifeed. We lost Vitifeed 120 million traffic and nobody cared about it. मतलब बंद हो गई कंपनी, कोई यूज़र होया नहीं. आज अगर स्टेज बंद हो जाएगा तो 5 लाख सब्सक्राइबर्स ऐसे हैं. आई नो फॉर अ फैक्ट वी विल गेट एटलीस्ट 10,000 कॉल्स अगर स्टेज आज बंद हो जाता है कि सर ऐसे कैसे हो गया, मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ आपके लिए, ऐसे कैसे बंद हो जाएगा, एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट स्टफ, राइट. सो दिस सो मच मोर, the work is so much more satisfying. The impact that we'll be able to create through this work is going to be so much bigger. The size of the company in the business sense also that we can create with Stage, there is just literally no limit. I was just doing a town hall with my team and I said, मैं कम से कम 20 लाख करोड़ सोचता हूँ जब मैं सोचता हूँ कि स्टेज कितना बड़ा होगा. मैं कम से कम 50 साल सोचता हूँ. मैं कम से कम ये सोचता हूँ कि यार मेरी ज़िंदगी से तो आगे जाएगी ये कंपनी. एटलीस्ट इतना बड़ा, इतनी बड़ी तो बनेगी, इतना दिन तो ये सर्वाइव करेगी कंपनी. आई कुड नेवर इमेजिन दैट हैपनिंग विद विटीफीड. So whatever happens for the good. That was one thing that I was able to, accept in life in a very big way. Business lesson I don't know है कि नहीं, but life lesson जरूर है कि don't be disheartened when the struggle happens, when the bad strikes. I think in the long term view, what we all end up realizing कि जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है, and you should just accept it as it happens to you. हमारे गीता से एक कॉन्सेप्ट है प्रारब्ध का. आई एम श्योर आप सब, देयर आर लॉट ऑफ सीनियर पीपल इन द रूम, सो यू मस्ट हैव रेड इट. प्रारब्ध क्या बोलता है? यही तो बोलता है कि यार जो होना है वो होना है, वो फिक्स है. डेस्टिनी एंड फ्री विल में यही तो कॉन्सेप्ट है कि जो होना है वो होना है, वो आप उसको एक्सेप्ट कर लो. व्हाट यू कंट्रोल, व्हाट योर फ्री विल इज, that how you respond to it, how you react to it, right? And I think that is the biggest lesson that I learned from that Stage to Vitifeed to Stage transition, and applied that in Stage and in my life, and has seen so many results. One more thing and then I'll probably close. There are so many learnings that I'll share, तो सारा panel ही मैं खा जाऊँगा. But एक learning और मैं बताना चाहता हूँ. When I reflected during that period, what I found was that from 18 साल की उम्र में मैंने एक कंपनी स्टार्ट की थी, and I lost it at about 27, 28. The 10 years that I spent, that last decade that I spent before Vitifeed, I could define it using 2 words. One was fast and other was big. Everything had to be big and everything had to be achieved very fast, right? We just before Vitifeed died, 3-4 महीने पहले उसके, we were offered a full cash exit of 300 crore rupees, and I owned almost 100% of the company. 300 crore rupees are life changing money. मेरी फैमिली तो मतलब अगले 7 पुश्तों से ख़त्म नहीं होते पैसे, राइट. आई कम फ्रॉम अ वेरी डिफरेंट बैकग्राउंड. 1 करोड़ सुन के मेरे पापा डर जाते हैं, बोलते अरे तो कुछ गलत तो नहीं कर रहा है. 300 करोड़ तो मतलब अनइमेजिनेबल अमाउंट ऑफ मनी, राइट. एंड वी रिजेक्टेड इट. नहीं यार 300 बहुत बड़ा बनाएंगे, यहाँ से तो बहुत बड़ा बनेगा, एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ, राइट. एंड बहुत फास्ट, हर चीज़ बहुत फास्ट चाहिए थी. टीम कुछ बात करते नहीं ऐसे चाहिए. आई यूज्ड टू डू lot of this basically, right? And when I look back at it, and when I was thinking about how do I want to spend the next 10 years of my life, how do I want to build the next company that I want to build, I summarized it again in 2 words, and I'm building Stage with that, which is that I want everything to be slow, and I want everything to be small. It has nothing to do with my ambition, by the way. No, make no mistake in understanding that my ambition is shortened by that. No, but I'm not in hurry. Basically, the shift from short-term thinking to long-term thinking, the shift from simple interest to compound interest. सारे मारवाड़ी बैठे हैं, ये तो पक्का समझ में आया होगा, है ना? So the shift from looking at life in a longer format and letting the magic of compounding, letting the magic of life as it works and only in compounding happen to me is what I was able to accept. And it gave me so much more peace. It gave me so much more calmness. I was able to kind of lean back and, see. I think my horizon increased because of the fact that I was not in hurry. I was okay with slow and I was okay with small, and I was I was very much of belief. I was settled in my own heart that this all small will compound and will become very large at one point in time in my life. And I think that was another biggest lesson that I ended up learning from BTV to Stage, and I applied at Stage. Thank you.
Awesome. Can we have a huge round of applause for that? This journey is an absolute testament to what we call resilience, right? This is the epitome of it as it comes. And I'm so glad we could hear it from the horse's mouth in the version that was very original. Thank you so much for that, Vinay. Coming to Aniket, how many of you in the room know that you are probably entitled to 35 government schemes? Any hands? How many of you ended up watching Aniket's episode on Shark Tank? Again, another homework for all of you in the audience. That's also another incredible episode to catch. Coming to you, Aniket, what is incredible about what you've built is some lakh crores in government schemes granted to a couple lakh families in the country from a network of 40,000 service agents through 500 plus and couple thousand corporates. How do you do this? Tell us, when you are growing through the last 7.5 years of building Haqdarshak, building this network and establishing all of these pieces, how do you align them? What are the things that you have to do as a company to make it happen?
So when I started kind of thinking of the problem way back in 2013-14, so very similar, the internet penetration was very low. I graduated from SRCC, so my thinking back then was to work on economics and policy. So I actually wanted to do this as a project and go off to US. Leave alone starting a company, I didn't want to be in the country. I wanted to do this only as a project. But I think the deeper I got into the problem, so some statistics there also, right? Like every rural or urban low-income family is eligible for 40-45 schemes. All of us, if you screen yourself on our Android app, you will see you are eligible for 8 to 10 government schemes. The concept of social security itself is a very nascent kind of topic that is in a country like India. It's a very European concept. Social security, pension, insurance. We are still scratching the surface. So when I started Haqdarshak, one thing that I kept in mind was that identify a problem that's a must-have, right? Not necessarily a good to have. And be obsessed with the problem, but not with your solution, right? If you really want to identify the different aspects of how you can solve the problem fascination has to be, like you need to literally be obsessed with it. And that's what gradually in Haqdarshak, we and our team have over the years built that kind of obsession that in our lifetime, we want to solve the social security delivery problem. How we do that has evolved. When we started, we wanted to be a product platform, very lean team, and kind of didn't want to have any feet on street. And we started from there. Then we quickly realized that that will not work. If you really want to go to the last 500 million kind of users in India, we need to have a assisted tech service. So from building a simple platform to then building a women network agent, 92% of our agents are women. They're first-time digital users. Out of them, 70 have now won elections in their villages and local gram panchayats. So that has kind of evolved. We've looked at different segments along the way, how, different, whether it's farmers, MSMEs. So I think joining the dots and having a very common kind of mission is what really drives us. It brings innovation. It also keeps you agile. I think the session before this, we were talking about generative AI. We are already working on voice-based solutions with the government, Bhashini and Jugalbandi, where AI can be used, and then multiple other solutions. So all of this can only happen, again, if you are looking at the solution at a macro level and are looking at it with a lot of agility, because a lot of what we all are solving for, a lot of ecosystem changes are also parallelly happening. So I think that's where the kind of differentiation in solutioning really happens.
Awesome. Problem first approach is the way to go, and long-term thinking. Great to have these points mentioned. While I would be pleased to go on, we are approaching the end of the session. So what I'd request all of you to do is, whoever's interested in asking a question, please raise your hand. We'll do this in an interesting way. We'll take all questions at once so that we have a wider range of questions. And then either of you can answer whichever one suits you the best. And if there is any particular directed question, please let us know. So would love to have audience participation. Please ask whatever you'd like. Yes, I see hands in the audience. Lovely. Please go ahead. Can I request a mic to be circulated in the audience, please? Thank you so much.
Good morning, everyone. Myself, Surya Saraf. I have a manufacturing company. So, like, if I want to have certain projects, like what schemes does the government provide for MSMEs in terms of depending on the land and depending on the state facilities and all? Is that something we can approach you for that?
Sure. So manufacturing schemes, manufacturing business schemes for that business.
Yes.
Got it right? That's the summary. We'll come back to it. Next question, please. Yes. Go ahead.
Hi everyone, my name is Aditi. My question is to Aniket. So you talked about having a business, or when you started Haqdarshak, you had the mindset about launching something that is a must-have and not good to have. But what if you, as a founder, identify something that is a must-have, but people or your target audience doesn't realize that it's a must-have? So how do you convince them that it's a must-have?
Must have versus good to have. How do you convince the audience with respect to it? All questions to Aniket for now. Can we have questions for Divyanshu and Vinay also, please? Audience? We'll come. We have another question. Okay. Yes. Maybe we'll take that and go to answers. Yes.
Hi, this would be to Vinay and Aniket both. I feel with your kind of businesses, this is more of a category creator because there wasn't anything before this. So to understand your exact target audience and to convey correctly and position in the market, what were the challenges and how did you solve them?
Awesome. That's the question for Vinay. Maybe Vinay can answer that. Any more questions from the audience? We have one in the back. Awesome. We'll take that. Everything was concentrated in one area.
Hi, my question is to Vinay ji. My question is, when you do regional content, right, and what happens when giant players like Netflix also starts making regional content if they see a profitable company existing in that niche?
Got it. If Netflix starts doing this also, how do you compete with them? Awesome. Any more questions from the audience? This is a gold mine of insight, so this is your opportunity. Awesome. See, yes, we have another. Great.
विनय सर, ये सवाल आपसे है। जब आप विटी फीड को क्रिएट कर रहे थे, तो ये माइंडसेट आपके दिमाग में था कि जब हम लोग कोई सोशल मीडिया प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर रिलाय नहीं करना चाहिए था, जैसे इंस्टाग्राम हो गया, फेसबुक हो गया, हम लोग उसके ऊपर एक प्लेटफॉर्म के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा रिलाय कर जाते हैं, जब उनका एल्गोरिदम या उनका कंटेंट क्रिएशन सिस्टम कभी भी चेंज हो सकता है, कभी भी कॉपी स्ट्राइक भी आ जाता है, कॉपीराइट स्ट्राइक भी आ जाता है कोई भी अलग चीज़ के लिए, तो हम लोग को उसके ऊपर रिलाय नहीं करके अपना कुछ क्रिएट करना चाहिए। वो क्या राइट माइंडसेट है?
Sure. So basically that question is with respect to not relying on social media, because Witty Feed, Vinay's previous company, was wiped out of Facebook, if I'm not wrong, without a day's notice, without any previous intimation. So that's a very relevant question. Great. I'll probably have one very directed question. Okay, we have another. So that's the last question we'll take. We'll go to question answers after that. Gentleman at the back.
Hi Vinay, it's good to see you again. This is Rahul, by the way. I wanted to ask that most OTT platforms, including Sony's or Stars, are struggling to make money, be profitable. And I wanted to understand that how does the cost structure work? Like if you've planned, say, 5 or 6 series or movies for the next quarter, right? How do you gauge what the revenues might be, and accordingly how much we should be spending on it? Like how is all of that done? Because most firms, including Netflix, are still struggling to figure that model out.
Got it. So for the benefit, okay, we'll probably take the last question, please. Yes.
I have one question for Office Banao, right? So how do you manage scale? You have an all India kind of operation because Kerala से भी कोई बोल सकता है कि मुझे office बनाना है और जम्मू से भी बोल सकता है. So how do you have this entire setup if you can explain that?
Awesome. Scale for Office Banao, and probably I'll add to that, they've also grown to 250 plus members in the team in less than 2 years, right? So I'd love to, less than 1.5 years. Yeah, less than 4 months is what he's saying. So we'd love to know that bit also. Now we'll come to answers. Maybe we can start with Aniket. The manufacturing MSME business, government schemes for that, and must have versus good to have. How do you manage that and install that with the consumers?
So there are definitely a lot of schemes for MSMEs. I think government schemes have an eligibility criteria. It works like a probability theorem, if and or conditions. So in case of MSMEs, it will be the location, the state in which you are opening, what is the business you are opening. For example, there are schemes on if you are today installing a solar pump or irrigation pump, there are government schemes. If there are land related schemes, there are labor related government schemes. So there is a portal we have created, msme.haqdarshak, where you can screen your business plus, but I think also related to, I think when you're thinking of business apart from the entrepreneur, there are a lot of government programs for your workers, which can also increase the kind of stickiness to your business, plus also ensure that your cost comes down in forms of social security. So they're definitely there. On the good to have and must have, I think absolutely, while entrepreneurs always think their solution or the problem they are solving is a must have. But I think a lot of it, one, you have to have resilience as an entrepreneur as you're building, and if you're not getting that market response, the best thing that happens is by showcasing kind of some examples. Because whether in our case, when we were working with corporate, so one of our first clients was Godrej Construction, where we tried and solving the schemes problem for their construction workers. That example and brand led us to get 10 more clients. Right, so that initial example, and that's also linked to the second question that you asked in terms of category creation, that itself, I think a lot of businesses which are solving such problems, including Stage, I think the biggest problem that comes in there also is twofold. One is the attracting talent, and second is the kind of the investors or the people you can get in if you are raising money, or if you are even for that matter, if you are raising private capital or loans. I think during COVID, there were a bunch of investors who told us, if you have an agent network and a platform, why don't you become fintech? Why don't you start selling insurance? Why don't you start selling loans? There were other set of investors who were saying, why don't you get into skilling? Why don't you put your narrative as an edtech? Because everybody was putting money. And we stuck to our guns and said, no, we want to be the largest social security business in the country. So I think that in category creation becomes the biggest issue, because there are not enough, I mean, to all like respect to all the investors, but the fact is that there are very few who take a bet on kind of, a very, a category which, risk taking in terms of building a category. Most people, talent and money comes in when a category is built or there is some form of success. So that remains a challenge, but you just have to be resilient.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Aniket. Coming to Divyanshu, and I've been told we have very less time, so I'll request you to keep the answers succinct, but the two questions to you are how to grow the company and the org as a team at scale that you have, and the fact that you're an operations business primarily where you have to make offices. How do you control that pan-India? How do you make that happen?
So I'll be quick on this. Yeah, at Office Banao we do offices across the country. We have been engaged with customers in more than 25 cities already. I mean, cities as remote as Dahej in Gujarat and Aurangabad and Dehradun and Siliguri. We have run a project there. We're doing a project there. How do you achieve this? And this is again the basics of business. When you look at any service or product that you are offering or any solution that you are offering, there's a part of the solution which is non-linearly scalable, which is where you can put people in a room, and that room full of people can serve the entire globe practically, right? Then there's a part of the solution where you need to be present if that kind of service you are offering, like what we are doing as against what, let's say, Stage is doing. or what you are doing, every of these businesses have a part where you need to be present on the ground, where the, let's say, where the office is being made. So having that distinction is very important for us for all practical purposes, all technology work. We invest a hell lot in technology, in creating visualization tools, concept development. So our concepts are not done on PowerPoints. It's a technology that we have built. The entire design, all of that is a very centralized function, which is happening out of one or two offices. We have our presence in Delhi, NCR, Gurgaon, as well as Bangalore. That's where the design and the technology and all that stuff happens. Then when you go to the markets, when you go to an office site location, we are investing very heavily in getting our partners onboarded. We are investing very heavily in getting supervisor teams and project managers who are actually going to work on there. The third part of the solution is also, of course, procurement, which is where the furniture, decor, lights come in, and that's where we are building the logistics network. So end of the day, our story is also very important about enabling the tier 2, 3 markets, because Delhi, NCR and Bangalore, if you see the bigger offices, there is a solution already existing. For places like Indore, places like Kolkata itself, we are working on a couple of very marquee projects here. Places like Chandigarh, where we are working on a lot of projects. These are the areas where Bharat is growing, right? And this is where the aspirations of entrepreneurs is driving office market. And the way we are present is to segregate the centralized functions and the centralized solution from the on-ground solution. I hope that answers the question.
Absolutely. The last question, and there were four for Vinay, which were category creating solution, yet Netflix has not been able to make money. So how do you as a business survive? And if Netflix starts doing this now, what do you do? And how do you not rely on social? Because your previous startup was known by that. That's the last question.
I'll start with this one first. So short answer is all of us are smarter in the retrospect, right? जब तक समझ में आया तब तक चिड़िया चुग गई खेत बेसिकली, तब तक कंपनी बंद हो गई थी. एंड वी आर स्मार्टर दिस टाइम. बेसिकली अब जब स्टेज बना रहे हैं तो वी आर मेकिंग श्योर दैट किसी पे भी डिपेंडेंट ना हो. वी आर मेकिंग श्योर वी पिक द बिजनेस इन अ वे दैट द डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन इज ओन्ड बाय अस, whatever users we have, etc. So I think yes, you are. I'm glad you realized it. Don't make that mistake in your business. Don't be reliant on any platform, not just Facebook, Google, YouTube, whatever, but any other platform. Just don't be reliant on anybody for anything. Too much reliance is bad. I'll try and club the answer for the other two questions. You are right in asking the question that content, none of the OTTs today are making money, and content is the primary reason for that. The cost of content is very high. If you look at Netflix's financial also, 52% of their revenue goes into content costs as on date, right? And that's exactly where we have made the difference. Out front, we look like an OTT platform. We are an OTT platform, but in the back, हम basically Bollywood को disrupt कर रहे हैं. हम ये बोल रहे हैं कि फिल्म बम्बई में क्यों बनेगी, या फिल्म बनाने वाला बम्बई में क्यों बैठा होगा. हमारी फिल्म बनती है भिवानी, हिसार, रोहतक, सोनीपत, पानीपत, झुंझुनू, सीकर, जोधपुर, बीकानेर, बाड़मेर, जयपुर एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ बेसिकली. एंड ये भी मैं जिलों के नाम ले रहा हूँ. इससे भी हमारी फिल्म यहाँ भी नहीं बनती. हमारी फिल्म बनती है उसके पास के किसी गांव में, किसी छोटे टाउन में एंड सो ऑन एंड सो फोर्थ, राइट. ऑल आर टैलेंट इज देयर. व्हाट वी हैव एसेंशियली डन इज in the process of building Stage, we have ended up creating an entire Bollywood from scratch in Haryana and in Rajasthan. The Haryana one is very fondly called Harrywood today because of what we've done. There are more than 45 production houses. There are 1,500 people who have jobs directly, indirectly because of Stage, etc. In short, what has happened is because of that, the biggest benefit of creating your own industry is that the cost of talent is, you only pay for the cost of talent and not for the celebrity. एंड मेरे स्टार को यार अभी वैनिटी वैन नहीं चाहिए, उसको अच्छी फिल्म बनानी है, हरियाणवी में बनानी है. दैट इज व्हाट मैटर्स टू देम मोर देन दैट. वी एंड अप क्रिएटिंग एन एंटायर वेब सीरीज ऑफ 6 एपिसोड्स इन लेस देन 20 लाख रुपीज. कंपेयरिंग टू दिस, 20 लाख रुपए में एक एपिसोड भी नहीं बनता है किसी हिंदी कंटेंट का. एंड दैट इज वेयर वी हैव बेसिकली kind of innovated in terms of saving that cost. This is by our cost of operation even today at very low revenue is less than 10% of our revenue, our cost of content, right? And which is why we will make money one, and which is why we will be able to basically, मतलब Netflix चाहे तो भी 20 लाख में, मतलब उनके DNA में नहीं है कि 20 लाख में content बनाते कैसे. 20 लाख प्री प्रोडक्शन में खर्च कर देंगे वो फिल्म बनाने से पहले, उसके सोचने में खर्च हो जाएंगे 20 लाख तो बेसिकली, एंड दैट इज वाई वी विल विन ओवर देम बिकॉज वी आर कॉकरोच इन आवर ब्रेन बेसिकली, विल सर्वाइव एट वेरी लेस एंड सो विल विन ओवर एवरीबडी एल्स.
Awesome. Can we have a huge round of applause for the entire panel? This has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the insight.
After an enriching session on growth stories and lessons from the trenches, let's acknowledge our speakers, Mr. Vinay Singhal, Mr. Aniket Deogar, Mr. Divyanshu Sharma, and our moderator, Mr. Jivraj Sachar. May I invite Mr. Bimal Patwari, President of TiE Kolkata, along with Mr. Vineet Mohta, Vice President Bud Leaf, Shyam Steel Industries, please.